What would you do if a police officer dragged you out of your car by your hair? Listen to me for a minute. Picture a sun-scorched intersection, the kind of place where layers of heat sit over the asphalt like a memory you can't shake. A blue SUV idles at the corner. A young woman in the driver's seat scrolls through her phone. It's the kind of ordinary moment that lives in millions of people's lives every day, until it isn't. In a blink, the ordinary shatters. A uniformed officer yanks the car door open. Hands go for the seat, for a wrist. The woman resists, confused. Then there's the pole hair caught, the world tilted, a body torn from the vehicle, limbs flailing. A roar rises from the street, shouts, the buzzing of phones recording, the staccato bark of someone yelling, "Hey, stop! I'm telling you this because my channel Whispers Dream Nest exists to hold these moments close and stare at them until they stop being easy to ignore." We tell stories that change the way you think, investigations that change the way you see. Today's story begins with that single terrible image. But it does not end there. It folds into 1,000 other scenes, surveillance cameras blinking, frantic 911 calls, people on the sidewalk pressing record, and in those frames we find a question: what happens to trust when the people we deputize to protect us can break our bodies and our silence with a single decision? First, let me set the scene. The woman in that car, call her Maya, was 22. She'd left a shift or maybe coffee with a friend. No one was there to dramatize her life before the street corner did it for her. What started as a routine traffic stop, according to the officer's initial radio call, escalated in seconds. Some witnesses said the officer believed Maya had been driving erratically. Other onlookers would later argue he'd used a minor infraction to justify a more aggressive search. What the phone camera shows is clear. A struggle, a torso pulled through a doorframe, hair in hand, a woman sobbing that she hadn't done anything. The video went up online within an hour. By midday, the clip had been shared thousands of times. That's how encounters that ought to be private become public property overnight. An ugly, fast democracy of outrage. Eyewitnesses began to speak. A man across the street swore he'd seen the officer slam the car door into her face. A woman who had been walking her dog insisted the officer used a level of force that seemed excessive. The police department issued a short statement. An officer made contact after a traffic stop. An internal review is underway. The uniformed silence felt like a closing door to everyone watching. Across the city, people started to compare this clip to other moments they'd seen: dashcam footage of a stolen car screeching away, surveillance video of a brazen daylight robbery, where a thug stole a woman's purse, and then used the same stolen key fob to take her car, a viral clip of an officer rescuing the driver of a car that had caught fire after a collision. The montage of incidents that follows: suits, bad decisions, bravery, cruelty, confusion, began to look like a single messy story about modern life, how vulnerable we all are and how thin the line is between protection and harm. Let me tell you another quick story that will thread through what we saw in Maya's clip. Diana, a 70-year-old woman, is enjoying a morning stroll with her dog in an upscale neighborhood. A masked man jumps out of a blue SUV, points a gun at the dog and then at Diana. He forces her to the ground and rifled through her purse. In the chaos, he used a key fob he'd found to steal her car. 13 seconds of darkness, then surveillance footage shows the thieves hop in and drive away. Diana called 911, shaking, insisting she was still in shock. She could not make sense of how bold this theft had been, or why daylight had made no difference to the predators who think nothing of approaching a person in her morning routine. Across another part of town, an airport security screen grab hinted at a different kind of hide. A man with an odd wig revealed to be a shell for narcotics. When officers cut away the synthetic hairpiece, they found capsules sewn into it, drugs disguised as hair. It's not the same as being dragged from your car, but the shock is similar. The discovery that ordinary surfaces hide extraordinary risk, that trust can be violated through the smallest deception. These are not isolated. In one clip, an armored truck worker is forced at gunpoint while robbers calmly exit with boxes of cash in broad daylight. In another, a woman who had her car stolen used the Find My app because she'd left her AirPods case in the center console. Technology tracked the pod 50 miles away. The thief had painted her bumper bright blue, but the car came back. Then there was the heartbreaking footage of a father shoved at an amateur hockey rink, and the viral outrage over the man who pushed two teenage referees. There are countless moments like these, some ending in restitution, some in arrests, some in unanswered questions. So what's the larger problem we're facing? It isn't just that crime exists or that officers sometimes save lives, like the one who smashed a window with his elbow to pull a driver out of a burning car after a DUI crash. The problem is twofold and deep. 1. The question of proportionality. What force is reasonable, for what perceived risk? 2. The question of accountability. When a person with authority uses physical coercion, who watches the watcher and with what consequences? After the Maya video circulated, community leaders asked those exact questions. They pointed to the growing number of intersections where a minor traffic infraction can spiral into a violent encounter. They asked, are traffic stops the place where latent prejudice gets its most dangerous expression? Are people being penalized more harshly because of color, creed, or anxiety? The answers were messy because institutional practices are messy. They reveal patterns only after we stare long enough at the collective footage. I began to talk to people in neighborhoods where stories like Maya's play out over and over. One block's watch captain told me of a stop that sounded like a routine license check and ended with a broken shoulder and an officer on leave. A mother of 2 said she was terrified that a routine question about an out-of-state tag would turn into a strip. A college student described the split-second calculus he uses before deciding to keep his hands on the wheel or to comply with an order that seems questionable. Each of them had a clip in their head, an old dash cam, a neighbor's phone, an afternoon news segment, that shaped their posture in the presence of authority. It's important at this point to say what the footage cannot tell you by itself. Officer intent. A view from a single angle can't reveal what was in the officer's head. Was the officer afraid? Was he careless? Is there an honest misread in the heat of a messy moment? Those are not rhetorical niceties, they are practical barriers to understand. Body-worn camera footage, and the officer's own conversation with the dispatcher, when made available, help answer that, but often the system is slow. That slowness erodes trust faster than one single act of violence does. We got to a pivotal moment when an internal affairs investigator released a frame from the officer's body cam showing hands on the woman's shoulder, the hair visibly caught. Supporters of the officer argued the video lacked context. He'd been shoved, he'd called for backup, she'd resisted an arrest. Community members pointed to the larger pattern and demanded an independent review. The city held a press conference. The mayor said an investigation was ongoing and that the department took use of force seriously. Protesters gathered that night at the intersection where the incident occurred, holding candlelight vigils chanting the woman's name. The press coverage shifted from visceral shock to a broader conversation about policy, and that's where the ethical stakes grow sharp. Police departments operate in the gray zone between public safety and private dignity. Traffic stops are legally low-level contacts that too often become crucibles. When force is used, the injured party pays a personal cost, physical, psychological, sometimes fatal, while the department pays an institutional one. Once trust fractures, it doesn't heal with a statement or a single disciplinary transfer. It requires transparency, meaningful policy changes, training that actually reduces harm, and a culture that rewards de-escalation instead of being intolerant of it. If we zoom out from Maya's clip and Diana's stolen car, the city's media streams become a mosaic of the same theme: astonishing crimes, masked thieves, puppies stolen for resale, brazen jewel snatches at luxury stores, men accused of extreme violence. Humans are performing both heroism and harm in close proximity. An officer rescues a driver from a crash and minutes later is part of a squad that executes a violent takedown that leaves someone hospitalized. The pendulum swings between protection and peril, sometimes in the same Let me be clear, there are officers who risk everything for strangers. We have bodycam video of a cop crawling into a burning car to save a driver. We also have recordings of officers who escalate situations that could have ended quietly. The story we tell about policing in the 21st century needs to hold both of these truths at once. True reform is not a matter of replacing people wholesale. It's the practice of recognizing patterns, retraining, instituting accountability that is fair and rapid, and reimagining the role of nonviolent responses in interactions that do not require armed force. Now, the most important and dramatic beat of this story: the moment the officer dragged Maya from her car. The raw video is a small, merciless thing, 16 seconds that make your fists clench. You see the officer reach in, find a hold, and use the leverage of hair to pull a person through a doorframe. There is a collective gasp across the comments, and then a strange territorial debate about what you can or cannot do when you are scared behind the wheel. Some viewers say, if you feel threatened by the police, you should protest nonviolently. Others say you should comply. The thread of fear runs through both responses: the fear of being harmed if you resist, and the fear that compliance can sometimes still result in harm. In the immediate aftermath, Maya's account added texture. She told reporters she had been nervous, that she hadn't expected the stop to turn physical. She tried to get out of the car because she believed she was being dragged out regardless. She felt the officer's grip and thought, I need to break free. The officer's official statement released by his union said he felt the woman was reaching for something and that he used what training allows to prevent a weapon being retrieved. The tapes are still ambiguous on that point. That ambiguity is where policy needs to act, to set clear, measurable rules for the use of force that favor the sanctity of the human body, unless a real and present danger is obvious. The public reaction was protesters organized a march calling for the officer's suspension and an independent inquiry. Some neighbors brought home-cooked food to Maya's family. Others organized a petition to change how traffic stops are recorded and reviewed. Local activists held a teach-in about what to do during a traffic stop, how to keep your hands visible, how to ask to speak with a lawyer, how body cam footage can be requested. City council members convened a hearing where families and community advocates told personal stories, some of them heartbreaking, and all of them tethered to the same fear that a daily interaction could become a trauma. We must also look at how technology changes this story. A stolen car returned because of a Find My app, surveillance cameras catching thieves, dash cams that capture pursuit. These devices are both shields and mirrors. They reveal crimes and abuses, but they also invite new behavior. The more footage we gather, the less room there is for plausible deniability. That should make us hopeful, but footage alone is not the remedy. The presence of a camera does not magically prevent violence. It merely ensures the violence is later visible. The tools magnify accountability but cannot replace empathy or training. So what changes can realistically be enacted? Communities and reform-minded officials are pushing for several practical steps. First, transparency, rapid release of body cam footage, with privacy-sensitive redactions, to people directly affected by police actions. Second, independent oversight, civilian review boards with investigatory power and subpoena capability. Third, de-escalation training and policies that restrict the use of force for low-level infractions, such as traffic violations. Fourth, improved reporting and data collection, standardized categories of force that allow researchers to spot patterns. And fifth, investments in community-based responses to certain calls, like mental health crises, where unarmed teams could resolve situations more safely. I spoke to a sergeant who had been on the force for 15 years. He told me that behavior change must start at the top. If supervisors reward officers for making arrests with impressive numbers but do not reward restraint and patience, you get the wrong incentives. We discipline ourselves best when leadership models restraint, he said. He added that officers need more time in training scenarios that replicate the slow, banal terror of a tense stop long before they face it in real time. At the same time, there must be accountability when the line is crossed. If an officer uses a level of force that cannot be justified by the circumstances, there should be consequences. Meaningful, consistent and transparent consequences. That is the only way to restore a brittle trust. The climax of this arc is not just Maya's physical removal from the vehicle. It is the moment the city must decide what to do with the footage and with the person who made that decision. An independent review board recommended a suspension pending further investigation and a public hearing. That hearing filled the council chamber. Police union reps, activists, Maya's family and citizens who had their own taped stories. The chamber smelled like coffee and tension. People came with printed transcripts, with phone video, with names of people they'd lost. The debate that night was not whether the officer had meant harm. Intent is always slippery, but whether the action fit the smallest standard we should expect from those who wear a badge to preserve life and dignity.
When we look at systemic solutions, we must also consider prevention. How do we unclench a society where ordinary suspicion and small infractions escalate to physical confrontation? Part of it is culture, police training that emphasizes communication and diffuses a us versus them mentality. Part is policy, rules that minimize risky draws, that require warnings and patience, that create alternative responses for low-risk reports. Part is investment in the social infrastructure, mental health services, safe transportation, community mediators. After the hearing, the city made a small but notable change. They issued new guidance for traffic stops. Officers were instructed to avoid forcible removals unless a weapon was visible and immediate threat was present. Supervisors were to be informed in every case where physical force was used, and an independent monitor was asked to audit stops monthly. These were small steps, They did not fix everything, but they signaled a recognition that the old equation, traffic stop equals power to use whatever force necessary, was no longer acceptable. At the human level, Maya's life was not the same after that day. She spoke about the weeks of nightmares, of flinching at sudden touches, of feeling watched every time she got into a car. She also spoke about the small moments of community kindness, neighbors leaving flowers at the corner, strangers offering to drive her to work so she didn't have to face a trigger point alone. And she said this plainly: I want to be safe. I want the officer who thought it was okay to do that to be held to account, but I also want to know how to live in a city that keeps me safe without breaking me. We owe her more than hashtags. We owe her policies that reduce these encounters. We owe her a system that balances public safety with human dignity. If you've watched, and I know many of you have watched, there's a responsibility that follows the shock. Commenting online is not theater. It's part of a civic conversation. If you were there and you filmed, you can contact local oversight groups to preserve the footage. If you're an elected official, you can advocate for data transparency. If you're a neighbor, you can attend a town hall and ask what training your local department uses. If you want to help someone traumatized by an encounter, listen before you judge. These are practical steps that move beyond outrage. Before I wrap this up, I want to thread in a smaller set of scenes that remind us why this discussion is not abstract. Remember the daycare owner whose surveillance captured a quick theft of puppies? The shopkeeper whose security footage showed a man climbing through a ceiling? The victim of a hit and run whose neighbor's dashcam caught the plate? Those moments are brushstrokes in our larger portrait. Each one shows how technology makes action visible, but also how our social choices, how we respond, who we hire, how we legislate shape outcome. When an officer pulls on a person's hair to drag them from a car, it becomes an urgent public question. Do we trust our institutions to respond proportionally? Do we want a system where the default tool is force? Or do we want one where the default is de-escalation, transparency, and respect? I believe the answer is clear if we allow ourselves to be honest. We want safety. We want dignity. We can have both, but only if we choose strategies that preserve human life over the ego of authority. So here's the summary. A routine traffic stop escalated into a painful public spectacle when an officer dragged a young woman from her vehicle by her hair. The footage created immediate outrage and prompted calls for an independent investigation. The incident fit into a broader pattern of violence and heroism captured on our phones and cameras: robberies, rescues, scams, and rescue attempts, all stitched into a modern anatomy of risk. The problem is not singular, it's structural. Incentives, training, and accountability must align to reduce harm. The solution is multi-pronged: transparency, independent oversight, de-escalation training, better data, and community investment. If you watch this on my channel, Whispers Dream Nest, you know what comes next. Talk, share, don't let the clip dissolve into the endless scroll. Leave a comment. What would you have done? Share this video with someone who needs to see it. Watch related videos about how to safely respond to traffic stops and about how civilian oversight works in your city. Subscribe to Whispers Dream Nest for more deep dives into moments that change the way we see and stories that change the way we think. If you found this account helpful, like the video, share it, and let's build a community that insists on answers. Your voice matters, use it. I'll leave you with one final thought. Courage is not only the act of confronting a violent person, it's also the slow, steady work of showing up for one another, of demanding better systems, of voting for accountability, and of teaching our young people that respect and restraint are strengths, not weaknesses. If we want safer streets, we must be willing to change the rules of our shared life together. If you want me to expand on any part of this, more eyewitness accounts, a deeper dive into policy changes, or additional vignettes tying this incident into national trends, tell me which piece you want extended and I'll keep going. And if you like this, please like, share, and subscribe to Whispers Dream Nest. Your support helps these stories reach more people.